Hi, you're with India Post Live, India's first online news conversation portal. I'm Shivraj, and today we're discussing whether Swami's blessings and support will help leaders win this election. You can also join in on our conversation on indiaportallive.com and postlive.com, and you can also join us by tweeting. Our handle is hashtag IndiaPostLive, and you can also Skype in with your questions. So let's take a look at these elections, the 19th general election, and it's pretty clear that gunmen will play a huge part. They are, after all, the foot soldiers for many political leaders and are also very high value assets because they really draw in the crowds. So will they really make a difference? Let's take a look at this special report.
Former BJP leader Jashwant Singh is fighting a lonely electoral battle from Barmer in Rajasthan. BJP had not given him a ticket to contest this time. I heard Jashwant Singh quit the party to contest as an independent. Interestingly, the support for this 74-year-old leader has come from across the border. The head of Pakistan-based Peer Pagara sect, Peer Shubatullah Shah, has sent in a word of support for Singh. Given that the Peer has nearly 2.5 lakh Sindhi-speaking Muslim followers in Barmer, the support means a lot for Jashwant Singh. Beyond the cross-border good men vibes, the campaigning this time around has other Swamis and Babas too playing politics for different parties. Yoga Guru Baba Ramdev and Art of Living founder Sri Sri Ravi Shankar are openly supporting BJP in the elections. Tamil Nadu leader Jai Jayalalitha's supporter had recently organized a yagya in Delhi through a controversial government for her success. To top it all, Infosys co-founder Nandan Nilekani, who was a Congress candidate from Bengaluru, had consulted astrologer for the auspicious time to file nomination. DMK leader Stalin was late by an hour for his election rally, apparently to skip an inauspicious hour. These government command a sea of followers, and if their word is command for them, then it is a significant vote bank for leaders to woo. But does it actually help? Perhaps only the heavens know.
And joining us in studio is senior journalist Asha Khosa. Now, Asha, tomorrow the Shah Imam is going to be announcing support for the Congress. It's pretty clear that for campaign managers, these spiritual leaders are very high asset value because they really draw in the crowds, they mobilize resources. But in this election, it's a little different, isn't it?
Well, yes, different and same at the same time, because every election we see these godmen, exercising their influence on the voters' choices, but then we forget about it because 5 years is a big gap in public memory. Shahi Imam, as you said, he has always been coming out openly, from his mosque. He has been giving a support to one political party, and he does it very openly. But the difference this time and what used to happen earlier is, the support used to be more subtle, it was more unclear. They were a little shy of going out and pronouncing their support from the rooftops. But this time it is rather very open. The Babas are openly sharing space with politicians and telling them he's my candidate. And as this report suggested, they have huge following, and which means they are able to influence voters' choice. This is something which makes all of us think, is it right? Is it right to do? But that's how it is at this moment.
So the Election Commission, interestingly, is stepping in now. They're saying that at the one level, while religious leaders might announce their affiliations, if they mobilize large numbers of people, it will be seen as an expense for the candidates they endorse. So do you now see the Election Commission being a little more proactive in keeping a check and balance on this?
Well, I am afraid the Election Commission will not be able to do much here. The problem is we don't have laws to control these godmen. Spirituality and religion is something
very intrinsic.
It is very intrinsic. It is something very emotional. It is something very blind. Given the nexus between politicians and these godmen, which we are seeing right now, I don't think any politician will ever dare to make any laws to regulate this kind of euphoria which these religious men draw. So, in the absence of the laws, what can Election Commission do? As such, Election Commission is not very effective. Beyond the obvious, keeping a control on the obvious expenditure, these unforeseen expenditures which cannot be quantified, I'm not sure what can this Election Commission do. But nevertheless, they have taken the initiative, and that means there will be some kind of restraint. But nothing dramatic they can do in this.
So, in fact, the BJP's roped in a few godmen. You know, in Alwar and Sikar, for instance, they have an Arya Samaj leader, Swami Sumedhanand. They've also got someone in East Delhi who is a follower of Shri Ravi Shankar.
Yes.
So, significantly, not only are they asking them to solicit votes, but they're getting them tickets to go out there and move from the religious to the temporal issues of everyday bread and butter issues.
Well, yes, you can't stop anybody from contesting. We can't say that this is bad, why they are doing it. But the ethical question is, the logical question that comes to our mind is it right for people who are swayed by a godman's, or whatever they see in him? I don't know, I may not be believing in many of them, but people are swayed by their rhetoric, their influence, their power, and if it was only for religious and spiritual matter, they are fine. Maybe they are authority on that. But on political issues, but I sometimes wonder, if I go to a Swamiji and he gives me a lecture on religion and spirituality, I may take it. But am I that foolish enough to take his choice, his diktat on whom I should vote?
What for?
Do people take them seriously? I wonder sometimes.
So I believe we do have a caller from Bangalore, Mr. J.P. Santanam. Mr. Santanam, do give us your question. I mean, what is your perspective on Swami's jumping into the fray?
You see, their religion and politics have been mixed together for thousands of years. This bifurcation of religion and politics only took place about 150 years back. If you really go back in history and all, you take Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, when he came in, he was a political activist, actually. And over a period of time, it's changed over. You take Prophet Muhammad, he too was a political activist. And you come down, you take the gurus of the Sikh religion, they were political activists. Today, because of our position in which we have taken regarding secularism, we think that anybody in religion coming into politics is something which is avoidable. I don't think so. I think a religious person who comes into politics, he becomes a politician. And then he has to play by the rules of the game. You can't say, so just take for example somebody playing cricket. No, you can't say he's a banker, so you should play cricket like this. So politics is an arena in which anybody can express themselves. So I don't see why people should get so worked up if religious people come into politics.
Mr. Santanam, can I ask you something?
Yes.
You made very interesting comments that, all the prophets have been reformers. They have essentially been political workers. Absolutely right. But when people like me say, no, it perhaps might not be good for the religious men to dabble in politics at this stage, is because people like me are afraid of the power and the money power they have. Recently we have seen some instances where these godmen, they have amassed huge wealth. Their ashrams have become den of vices. They are doing all wrong kind of things. I'm not saying everybody is same, but there are a lot of people who have been found to be getting into all these immoral and criminal acts. So given this environment in our country, do you think it's justified that godmen also play political godmen?
Oh, you see, now let's take, you made 2 points. One is about the wealth and one is about the morality of the people getting into politics. Businessmen who come into politics, there are billionaires who are coming into politics. So, should we bar people who are billionaires, who have got a lot of wealth, who are industrialists from coming into politics? We can't do that. And now, take morality also, for example. Are we saying that all people who are in politics, they are very correct and they don't commit any problems or any mistakes? So if you go with the public opinion, they say that most of the politicians are corrupt, most of the politicians do wrong things. So should we then take away politics at all, completely from the thing? So I think we should judge the person coming into the politics and the way he behaves in the political arena, rather than seeing his background and especially the religious thing and having a tremendous bias.
So, Mr. Santanam, my question to you, because Asha raised this during our conversation, was, so if a spiritual or religious leader who's not standing came to you and asked you private questions about who you might vote for and tried to convince you, would you be open to that?
No, but why do you say that spiritual person? Supposing a doctor comes to me, he's my personal doctor.
Sure.
Okay? Or he's my therapist. Okay. Or is my tennis or a golf coach, for example. And he comes and asks, is it wrong for him to ask that? So I actually take umbrage to the fact that, religious people are put into some kind of a hallowed stuff. I think people who profess and teach religion are also human beings. And they have their share of problems being a human being. They can commit mistakes. And I'm sure there are plenty of good religious people also. If entire lot of religion on ashrams or all the religions were bad, then people would have shunned the religion. A large number of people are going into religion. There must be some good into it. So, using a broad brush to say that religious people should not get into politics, I think we are being a little bit extreme.
Well, Mr. Santhanam, there are two issues which emerge from what you told us. A religious person coming directly into politics is okay. As you are also suggesting, is fine. He is openly making a choice, becoming a politician, going to people, saying this is my agenda, please come and vote for me. That is fair game. But when a religious person uses his clout, his sway over people, to influence their choice, to help a party get votes unblocked, is that right thing to do? I am asking you, sir.
Why not? All the media people use their influence and clout and their reach to influence the voters. So if they can do that, people are using film stars to come in, to add glamour to the whole campaign and all that. So politicians are wanting to get to the people. And if there are a lot of people following religious leaders, the politicians want to get to them and get the votes. Now, the guys, the people who are professing the religion, some of them have got a bad image, and so we are judging the whole lot of them by this. So I think we should be a little bit more open to religious people coming in. At the end of the day, if you see, the general saying goes among the people that people who have religion are comparatively better than the people who don't have religion. For example, they say, yeah, he is a God-fearing man, so he can't be that bad. So I think people who have religious leaning, they come into politics. Per se, I don't think one has to become a secular person to come into politics. It's a fundamentalism in a reverse sort of a way.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Santhanam, for your perspective. I think that's a very interesting perspective and adds a lot of flavor to our conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I think it's an emotive issue and it's not going to be resolved. Of course, it will be resolved once we go to the elections. But I think at some level, this is the emotion that political parties are really sort of catching on to, because they realize that some of the issues are not going to be addressed. So religion has become the low-hanging fruit, the religiosity. So after all, everything's about Muharrat, right?
Very right, very right. I mean, even if you go to the top leaders, they also go by Muharrat, and they also go and photo a nariyal, coconut. They'll break a coconut before beginning their campaigns. These are surely religious rituals which they follow, and we cannot, as our caller was rightly saying, we should not also, and we cannot differentiate between a secular state or a secular person and a person following a religion. There is a dichotomy between the two, and which we have not been able to resolve what it is. And we are not saying it is wrong. Our only fear is that whether the people who are blind followers of a man, they will be blinded by his diktat to them. They will. And there's so many people following one religious person. It's a huge vote bank, and our political parties bribing these godmen to get their support. This thing is not, nobody is speaking about these things yet, but I'm sure in coming months and years, as the society opens further, these things are going to come out. Why not? If a godman can indulge in all criminal activities, as we have seen recently, rapes, murders, those kind of things, why he will not take money from a political party to give a diktat to his followers?
And that we've seen that Baba Ramdev and Shri Ravi Shankar endorsing openly candidates.
Yeah, we are not saying they took money, but why somebody in their position who have built huge wealth, they have built ashrams, some of them are wearing diamond on their caps, some people are moving in Ferraris and Porsche. They live very luxurious lifestyle. They are not those Himalaya people living in Himalayas and doing taking sannyas. They are very much enjoying luxuries of ordinary life. So these people have very high flying lifestyles.
So there must be some accountability.
There should be some accountability,
Right.
but at the cost of repeating, I'm saying, given the nexus between politicians and these godmen, who will dare to touch them if they
And
do
in fact,
something wrong?
like I said at the very outset, in terms of resource mobilization, they have a mass of followers. They know exactly who to go when. In fact, there was a recent report in Scroll.in that talked about why Shri Ravi Shankar wants your voter ID card number. So it draws attention to a certain level of actually intrusiveness where, the Art of Living Foundation actually went out and did a survey where they asked for voter ID card numbers, asked for addresses, data that, you've seen the debate. So that's pretty much crossing the line, isn't it?
That is very scary. Why are they doing it? Who is giving them this authority to intrude into others' lives? I mean, this is very scary. And what is the purpose of it? But who will touch them?
In fact, interestingly, we are joined on Skype by Shivam Vij, who's the associate editor at Scroll.in. Shivam, that report that was done on Scroll.in talked about the Art of Living Foundation, Shri Ravi Shankar, going down to the ground and actually trying to access confidential data. What are the implications of what they're doing there?
What they were doing was, they were saying that we are not going to tell you who to vote for. We are only doing a happiness survey and asking questions about whether you are happy. And in those questions, they were asking for your mobile number, your address, your name, and your voter ID card number. And then they were saying things like, if you are buying a car, or if you are hiring a driver, would you hire somebody who's an experienced driver or who just got a learning license? In other words, don't vote for AAP, vote for BJP. Then they were saying, strong, stable government with a strong leader. Again, the indication is clear. Now, the problem here, there are two problems here. One is that you either say that you are openly for BJP, or which is fine in a democracy, or if you're not saying that, then don't try the insidious ways. More importantly, when you ask for mobile number, address, voter ID card, and you ask if I'm happy, and if I say I'm happy, or if I hint that I'm going to vote for AP, then it means that you're collecting this data and you're potentially going to pass it on to the Narendra Modi campaign, which could then land up in my house, on my mobile phone, in my email address, to sort of do party propaganda. This is a problem because India has no data protection laws.
Sure.
So data that's collected is going to be used in any which way, and we don't know. So I might, and I've seen, in responses to that story on social media, I've seen people who are fans of Art of Living
Right.
Tell Shri Ravi Shankar that this is very disappointing because we are not with Art of Living for political purposes and reasons.
Absolutely. In fact, that brings us to the next question. It's a direct conflict of interest because Mahesh Giri is standing closer from home as a BJP contestant in East Delhi and is a follower of Shri Ravi Shankar, right?
Certainly.
Exactly. And some months ago, Shri Ravi Shankar actually endorsed Modi. So once you've done that openly and freely and in no uncertain words, then you do a happiness survey pretending to be objective, and you collect my personal and private data, and you don't tell me how I'm going to use it in a country which has no data protection laws. It is, as somebody said before me, scary.
Sure. And so what is the recourse here? Because the Election Commission has put out a statement that they are going to be watching religious leaders using political platforms. But do you think there is a mean of recourse?
Well, in a democracy, religious leaders have the right to endorse political parties, etc. The problem is that India's election laws technically do not allow mobilizing or in the name of religion or by using religious polarization. So I think when the Election Commission says they will be looking at religious leaders, that is what they will look for. And it'll be very interesting that tomorrow Imam Bukhari of Delhi is expected to endorse the Congress party. So this is definitely going to get interesting in a polarized election. In terms of recourse, I don't think people have much recourse other than their own good common sense.
All right. Thank you so much, Shivam, for joining us and providing us that perspective, because I think that's a very key question he's asking. There are no data protection laws. Our privacy is at stake, but clearly this is an election that's going to be quite emotive. And the fact that the religious element is another dimension, it's going to be quite a bit of back and forth, isn't it?
I think Shivam raised some very valid questions, and it is scary when somebody is taking data from us and we don't know how he will utilize it after a certain government comes into power, and what are they going to do with this data? Overall, it's something very scary, and election this time is hugely polarized, and in this government may be finding a greater role. And that is why they are coming out very openly and supporting people. Other than Imam Bukhari, we were used to only one Bukhari Sahib coming and supporting Congress party most of the time, and sometimes he would threaten, I might support BJP this time, but he never did it.
In fact, he did say that, he was upset with the BSP, and which is why he was going with the Congress.
Yes.
So, this is an emotive issue. So I'm going to ask our viewers watching this conversation to join in on the conversation. Get your friends to Skype in at India Post Live, and also use our Twitter handle, #IndiaPostLive, and join in on the conversation, because it is a conversation that we must have about the issue of religiosity and, of course, our privacy as well.
Certainly, surely. I mean, people have to think about these things, and in coming years, I think politicians may not be willing to act on this, but I'm sure institutions like Supreme Court of India, Election Commission, they will see this, they will analyze this phenomenon and come up with some solution. I'm hoping and praying that something like that happens, because right now people are very vulnerable to the diktats of these godmen, and as Rich was saying, your data being collected, and we know what these some of these godmen are doing something very scary things.
All right, so of course we will only know after mid-May if any of these godmen really made a difference to the votes and brought in the voters to vote for the leaders that they profess to support. Thank you very much for joining in on our conversation, Asha, and thank you for listening in and participating.